Hello, it's the Hobo. Hit the like, subscribe, and the bell, and we'll get on with it.
Given some of it handed over to the Afghan security forces, and of course, some of that is now in the hands of the Taliban.
So I was also struck by your comment that in your testimony that even the most pessimistic assessment didn't predict the government would collapse as quickly as it did. But you just, in your testimony, said that the realistic predictions before the complete withdrawal was that it was going to collapse by the end of this year. So the administration continued with their plans of withdrawal, of evacuation, of surrender, knowing that Taliban would be in control of $80 billion worth of sophisticated equipment at the end of that, correct? I mean, did that discussion ever come up in terms of maybe that wouldn't be a good idea, leaving all that equipment behind as we bug out of Afghanistan?
That assessment came in July. Much of the equipment, and again, I'll defer to my colleagues at the Pentagon, who are more expert in this than I am. Much of that equipment was made inoperable. Other pieces of equipment will become inoperable because there is no ability on the part of the Taliban to maintain it. None of it, to the best of my knowledge, poses a strategic threat to us or to any of Afghanistan's neighbors. What we're looking at are primarily uniforms.
So we have an oversight letter. We'd like response on that. Let's just quick talk about the decision to close down Bagram. I mean, again, the president says this was, unanimously decided by the military. But isn't it true that the president decided what the troop level would be? A very minimal troop level. The president decided that we would keep the embassy open and it had to be protected. He forced the military's hands, right? In the end, it was his decision. It wasn't the military's decision to close Bagram.
The president makes the strategic decisions when it comes to the actual drawdown, the retrograde, to use the technical language. Those were decisions made by his military commanders. He sought their best advice, and that's what was carried out, including the timing of the decision to...
Another troubling piece of your testimony, you said, when the president announced the withdrawal, NATO immediately, unanimously embraced it. Mm-hmm. Joseph Borrell, the foreign affairs chief of the European Union, his statement on the surrender is that it's, quote, a catastrophe for the Afghan people, for Western values and credibility, and for the developing of international relations. The Wall Street Journal summarizes it quite nicely in their piece, just the title, How Biden Broke NATO. The chaotic Afghan withdrawal has shocked and angered U.S. allies. Again, that's detachment from reality that our NATO allies are on board with this thing. They're not. That's not what we're hearing.
Senator, I went to NATO well before the president's decision, along with Secretary of Defense Austin, and spent the day with all of our NATO allies, listening to them, their views, their prescriptions, their ideas for what we should do moving forward in Afghanistan. I shared some of our initial thinking at that point. We factored in everything we heard from our allies into our own decision-making process. When the president
just like you planned for every contingency. Okay, I got it.
If I could just continue.
But now, listen, it's bureaucratic speak. I have some questions. So, again, my concern is the detachment from reality. So, as we surrendered, as we're evacuating, as we're bugging out, we're hearing all these soothing comments from the administration. This is, almost like a well-oiled machine here. We've got, flights just leaving and 124,000 people being evacuated. We heard something completely different. So tell me what is wrong about what I had heard. First of all, prior to the Taliban providing perimeter security, there was no security, and basically tens of thousands of Afghanis flooded into the Kabul airport, correct?
There was perimeter security around the airport established.
But we literally had tens of thousands of people. We did not know who these people were. It wasn't like people we invited in that were special immigrant visa holders, correct?
We did not control the city. We controlled the airport. Sorry if you.
But again, so we had tens of thousands of people in Kabul airport. The reports we were getting on the ground is many had no form of ID whatsoever. When I went to Fort McCoy, I asked the commanding general. Again, every contingency planned for. I asked the commanding general, when did you first find out that your mission would be as an intake facility for the Afghanistan refugees? He said 10 days ago. I asked the commanding general, I asked the representative from the Department of State, as well as from the Department of Homeland Security, do we know that every refugee that you've received so far, and there's only 1,000 at that point in time, do we know that they at least have some form of ID? And we didn't. We're hearing all these assurances that we're getting biometrically screened, a 14-step plan. I asked the head of Northern Command, he's at Fort McCoy, describe those steps to me. What do we screen them against? I mean, are ISIS terrorists, are Al-Qaeda terrorists, have we biometrically screened them in the past so that we can compare them to a database? What is that 14-step process in detail? Not just 14 steps. Tell me, describe to us in detail, how are we keeping this nation safe from such a chaotic situation?
So, Senator, the 14-step process refers specifically to the special immigrant visa applicants, and there is a lengthy process.
So how about for the other 124,000 people?
So yes, so to come to your point, Senator, a couple of things. We arranged, as you know, transit countries so that any Afghan coming out of Afghanistan would initially go to a transit country where we could initiate the screening, the vetting, the background checks. We surged Customs and Border Protection officials to those transit points, as well, of course, as other security law enforcement agencies to do these checks with biometric, biographic, other information that we have. Then, as people are cleared in these transit points, they then come into the United States, but they're not being resettled immediately. They are going, once they land at Dulles or in Philadelphia, they are then being sent to military bases where the checks continue and are completed.
But again, what checks? We need specifically what the checks are going to be.
The senator has